I was 3 years old the first time Reverend Jesse Jackson ran for president. So my entire life, I've somewhat correlated his political influence and power with that of the black church in and of itself. And now, if memory serves me correctly, and I could be 100% wrong about this, Al Sharpton became a reverend after he gained notoriety as a quote unquote civil rights activist, whereas Reverend Jesse Jackson was a reverend the entire time. Now, since then, it's been, what, like over 30 years. And I'm pretty sure he only ran a few times, but his power has waned. He was caught up in quite a few scandals along with Sharpton, but I think the media hit him a lot worse than they did the other guy, than they did Sharpton. I think he was just drugged in a lot of ways. If memory serves me correctly, his son was caught up in something. I'm not 100% sure, but here we are in 20 going into the 2020 elections, and it's really funny how the media has been playing their cards when it comes to the quote unquote black vote, because since Obama came through and just tossed a wrecking ball into the into the mix when it comes to black politics, quote unquote black politics. They're looking for any and everybody. I remember during his other election, during Obama's election, they were not going at Jesse Jackson. Didn't want to say anything to Jesse Jackson, primarily because of the tarnish that he had. But right now, they just want anybody that can corral the Negroes, right? But unfortunately, so many of the people who operated with who really gave him his reverence are gone. I mean, time is a very interesting thing, and what's done is there's been a lot of people just taken from us, a lot of people caught up in things, and here we are, where all these years later, Reverend Jesse Jackson still here. So let's get into this article. Jesse Jackson opens up on 2020 and the changing Democratic Party. The civil rights activist and two-time presidential candidate defends Buttigieg, blasts Biden, and praises Warren in a wide-ranging interview. Coming out of it from Chicago, and there is no name on this, so it'll probably be there at the end. The Reverend Jesse Jackson has lost a step. The 77-year-old two-time presidential candidate's roaring sermons have become more muted and mumbled. His walk has become slow, unsteady. Parkinson's disease has taken its toll. At the news conference here over the weekend with Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, she held up the microphone for him when he spoke. Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition event on Saturday at the 4,000 capacity Apostolic Faith Church drew only a few hundred people. Nobody's packing the punch that they used to, particularly these candidates that they're running out here as, pawns for the Democratic Party. And this is really where everyone's lost their credibility. I mean, they say the first line is he's lost a step, but unfortunately he lost the plot a very long time ago. Him, Al Sharpton, all these different people that supposedly spoke for and represented Black America, but were ultimately working in their own best interest, not in the best interest of the collective. But when it comes to the Democratic Party and its 2020 presidential primary, Jackson and his progressive organization for social change are more relevant than ever as the party embraces the issues he ran on 3 decades ago. And let me remix that right quick. As the party embraces the issues he lost on 3 decades ago. Okay? They weren't ready then. The country wasn't ready then. The country isn't ready now. The country will probably never be ready for a lot of the ideas and the quote-unquote progressivisms that such organizations and such figureheads espouse. The 84 campaign broke the sound barrier, he said in an interview after the Rainbow Push event, which features Warren, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, and Rep. Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii. Oh, okay, he got my baby out there. Hey, Tulsi, he got Tulsi. Part of the whole idea was to sow seeds that would germinate. That's why, even though Jackson may not command a podium or draw crowds as he once did, at least 6 presidential candidates are joining him during the annual Rainbow Push International Convention, which ends Tuesday. It's also why candidates emphasize their ties to his presidential campaigns. Well, yeah, because I mean they trying to catch every Negro that they can get. And you can get a couple of those seniors, maybe they grandbabies might just vote for me. You know, I mean, out there, I believe everybody should vote for Tulsi. That's my girl. Just because she's anti-establishment. You know what? The rest of it, everything else. You know what? Screw it. She's anti-establishment. The establishment hates her, which is one of the reasons she's one of the most underplayed candidates in this entire race. And that's why I love her. And if she can maintain that and not bend the knee to the establishment, woo, she's going to be a problem, baby. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont talks about his endorsement of Jackson in 1988 while he was mayor of Burlington. Vanity Fair noted in its cover story of former Rep. Beto O'Rourke that he displays at home the picture of him meeting Jackson as a kid when his dad served as Texas co-chairman of Jackson's campaigns. And Klobuchar mentioned in a speech on Saturday that her political mentor, the late Senator Paul Wellstone, managed the Minnesota primary for Jackson. So, I mean, his network is like, that's the thing about the political industry, the campaign industry, is that, you know, there's legacy people, there's people that have been doing these things for their entire lives, last 50, 60, 80 years in some cases. So make no mistake, political operatives come in all forms, and most of them are names you don't know and probably will never know. Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York is set to appear with Jackson on Monday. Mayor Pete Buttigieg of South Bend, Indiana, is scheduled to address Rainbow Push on Tuesday amid community anger back home over a police officer shooting and killing of a black man while not having his body camera turned on to record it. Pardon me. In a wide-ranging interview about several of the 24 Democratic candidates and the most diverse presidential field in history, Jackson defended Buttigieg. I don't know why. Well, we're about to find out. What happened there is not his fault, he said, blaming structural problems of long-time segregation in the city's housing and the fact that most of the city's police officers live outside the city, making them what he called an occupying force. Indiana law prohibits cities from requiring officers to live in city limits. He handled it with humbleness. You know, I failed, Jackson said, referring to Buttigieg's remarks at the presidential debate last week. But he failed not just because he wasn't on it, he failed because of structural abnormality. And that's why I think the press has some role to put issues in context. Which I don't disagree with. I mean, the media is... They frame a story, or they have a narrative and they push that framing or that narrative. Jackson was less forgiving of former Vice President Joe Biden, who joined Jackson at a convention evening on Friday. So, but you still stood with him, right? Speaking about Biden's record on busing, which has become a flashpoint after Senator Kamala Harris of California confronted him at the debate, Jackson said that Harris established Biden on the states' rights side of history, which cannot stand the test of time. He framed Biden's opposition to federally mandated busing as part of a larger debate over the federal government's trying to create racial equality. Well, that's the thing. If memory serves me correctly, Biden at the time, and I'm with this now too, you know, the Fed, they wanted to leave it to the states and wanted to leave it, you know, to the localities, probably with some federal oversight. And this is one of the many things that's going to be taken out of context and won't matter in a month or two or in a day or two. Like, that's the thing about all of these campaigns and all these little sound bites that people get, is that they're ultimately worthless. He's for voluntary busing. I'm for court-ordered busing. Well, everyone's for voluntary busing, Jackson said. The federal government had to order the abolition of slavery. The federal government had to order the right to vote. They had to order the desegregation of schools and jobs and contracts. So voluntary assumes that those who are oppressive have some will to move based on moral values, and that does not happen, which is a sentiment that I agree to. But at the same time, I mean, why force these people together? You know, I mean, I wasn't there for the segregation integration debate. I see the merits and I see the detriments on both sides. Seriously, like I see where this has been fantastic. Trust me, I am a beneficiary, but I've also seen some of the harm and some of the damage that is done. And, I believe it's unfair to force people into positions. I believe that certain things should be left up to, as far as execution goes, definitely should always be left now up to the municipalities and those in charge. Those in charge of the municipalities with oversight from those above them. Plain and simple. Jackson added that Biden had done a lot of good things. Of course he did. The candidate's campaign has noted that as a senator, Biden advocated for the Voting Rights Act and other federal programs to compel equal treatment of people based on race, but that he merely felt that busing was an ineffective program for integrating schools. That's the thing. I wasn't around for that situation, so it's actually foolish to go in on it. But this is back in the day, back when that man had a full head of black hair. That's Al Gore, right? Yeah, Al Gore and Michael Dukakis. Okay, that's fun. But see, look at all that racial harmony. This looks like Lethal Weapon. Well, there's no Mel Gibson, but this looks like they're just having the best time. Yeah. The controversy over Biden's past opposition to busing is representative of the larger shift in the Democratic Party towards confronting racial disparities, and is another sign of how it has come closer to what Jackson campaigned on in the 80s, remedying the racial wealth gap, redlining practices, abusive policy, and mass incarceration of people of color are now part of most candidates' platforms and their stump speeches, but the problem is that there are absolutely no specifics, particularly on the abusive, I said abusive policy, though the term was abusive policing. The deal is that none of it, who gives a shit? Change these damn policies, change these laws. End the damn drug war. Golly, they always sit there and I'm like, oh yeah, we want to do this, that, and third. Well, give me a specific, because I give a specific every single time. Dead the damn drug war. I want it gone so bad. Reparations for slavery, which Jackson campaigned on in 1984 and 88, have been embraced by candidates and were the subject of a recent congressional hearing in a democratically controlled House. Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, one of the many white men running, has been on the campaign trail giving out copies of a recent biography on Frederick Douglass. Okay, I have one of those myself. Deal is that when it comes to reparations for slavery, what do you think the welfare state has been, man? I mean, there's been so many developments since then that it's just an entirely new ball game, and the ball game changes every single day, and they still stuck on this nonsense. Beyond issues of race, top Democratic contenders also echo Jackson's support for a government-run single-payer health system and passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. Of course it is. In many ways, dismissed or forgotten over the decades, the Jackson campaigns have reemerged as an ideal for many activists on the far left in the Trump era. And that's the thing. And those are the exact same ideas that are going to bring you the L on in 2020. Plain and simple, because it's no moderation at all. It's just more left. And he's, of course, the loonies are going to enjoy. They're having a time of their life. But unfortunately, because they really have it wrapped up in their head that, oh man, I can win this and I can make all these different changes. Nah, pimp. Nah, this moderation in all things. Please believe. In some significant ways, the Jackson campaign was an answer to the question of what an alternative strategy for the party, one rooted in people rather than money, might have looked like. Ryan Grimm, the progressive journalist and Washington bureau chief for The Intercept, wrote in his new book, We've Got People from Jesse Jackson to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, The End of Big Money and the Rise of a Movement. Is that movement communism? Because I gotta say, I'm not really interested in communism, man. People have just been outright with it, particularly with the Antifa and the anti-fash guys out there in Oregon. They're like, oh yeah, we're comrade and all this other stuff. Whoa there, pimping. Nah, man, nah, we good. Drawing parallels between the Jackson campaign and the current debates of the Democratic Party today, Grimm wrote, it was one that excited Democratic voters, but it had them wondering if Jackson was truly as electable as the safe Michael Dukakis. Saying, guess what? Neither one of them got the job. Jackson himself said he had no plans to endorse anyone in the primary, but he gave Warren very high marks after his speech on Saturday. Because, at the end of the day, they're all just Democratic plants. I mean, I hate to sit here and make it sound like, oh, terrorist cells, but I mean, cells, these things known as cells, little operations within operations within operations within operations, they happen. And honestly, Jesse Jackson, he's a big part of one of them. But that's definitely losing its that's definitely lost its luster over the last 30 years. Personality is the conduit through which information gets. She has a personality that's magnetic, and she'll be in a race to the end, he said. I don't know how it'll end, but I don't know how it end up, but she'll be a factor in the outcome of this race. And I assume you're talking about the that's the thing called the primaries that are taking place right now. So let's bring this on back to Jesse Jackson and the Black church. The deal is that the jig is up. Okay? I mean, with all due respect, Reverend Jackson, the jig is up. We all see past the nonsense now. Even if people don't fully get it yet, like it's going off in the back of their heads. They know the nonsense when it's put in front of them. And the Democratic Party has used and exploited the hell out of the history that's supposedly in your blood, sir. And you, amongst thousands of others, have permitted this. You guys we sit there, we know all these things, particularly from the Nixon administration when it came to what they intended for the drug war. And what happened? Nothing. You said nothing. You continue to say nothing. To this very moment, sir, you are not to be taken seriously as anyone who wants to genuinely do something to help and benefit that of descendants. And by extension, everyone else. Because I'm the type of person that always believes that you got to take care of yourself first. Then you can take care of everybody else. Secure your mask first, and then assist the person next to you. And when it comes to the collective of descendants, we've been run so astray that everything you say, everything Sharpton says, if you're under the age of 50 or so, yeah, it's going right over your head. Cause you are like your stank, your BS, your self-entitlement, and your self-interested motives and operations. It's all out there. It's all out there. So, with all due respect, couldn't care less what you gotta say, brother. Sorry. And that goes doubly for the church. This is how I wrap the church back into it, because guess what? It's the exact same thing. All you got to do is switch out Reverend Jesse Jackson for the church and everything that I just said, and it goes double, actually. The church, the black church, man, it's nothing more than a single mother, I guess, ticket dispenser. A single mother guilt-free ticket dispenser. For the most part, with full of ministers and pastors that's just there to collect the tithing, and it's an easy check. Sitting there, oh yeah, they want the power and the prestige of being a reverend. Well, guess what? Y'all ran that title into the ground. I saw y'all doing it when my father was a minister. And look at the black church now. It's nothing. And another thing is just that it's more widely known that during the times of slavery, the black church was used as a means in which to keep the slaves in line, keep the slaves in order. And really, it continues to this very moment. As everyone sits back, counts their money, and says nothing, while we got millions of American kids coming up in just the most desperate and poverty-stricken situations due to environments that people such as yourself, Reverend Jackson, you ignore. I keep saying with all due respect, but I genuinely don't believe that any respect is due. With that being said, all the internet stuff. Like it if you liked it, sub. Or dislike it. I'm not scared of you. Sub if you enjoy my fantastic voice. Share, because sharing is caring. And let me know, what do you think? Okay? Particularly about Jesse Jackson. I mean, all the things that, because I'm not about to sit here during this video, because I think it's long enough as is, but I'm not about to sit here and go into all his history and everything else like that, but I think that'd be a lot of fun for the comment section. So, let me know what you think of Jesse Jackson. If you, if you were born, like, in the 90s, or particularly in the 2000s, man, like, yo, like who? Jesse who? I guess, like, okay, maybe you came across that he ran for president a couple of times, but yeah, that's about it. As far as political power and political, chutzpah now, nah. We have to evolve beyond you, sir, because you represent the old school, a way of doing things that no longer apply. Until the next one, guys.